Today we're going to examine our hearts. We're going to x-ray our hearts. What we're going to do, though, is we're not going to x-ray our hearts the way that the medical community would. We're not looking for mitral valve prolapse. We're not looking for clogged arteries. We're not looking for opportunities to perform angioplasty. We are not looking for physical defects at all. What we're looking for are spiritual defects, the things that really, really hurt us. Because you and I can be healthy as a horse, strong and in good shape, and maybe our ticker's working just fine. We may think that because of that, because things are going well in our lives, physically and otherwise, that it doesn't really matter that much about how healthy we are spiritually. Let me tell you something. You can be as in a good a shape as anybody on the face of the earth, and if you have an inner heart problem spiritually, just how good a shape you're in doesn't mean anything. And conversely, you could be very ill, very sick physically, but if you got your heart right with God, then you're okay. And that's the way it works. Giving in to temptation. We talked last week about how to defeat persistent temptation. We're going to continue it this week with something different. Giving in to temptation is the one thing that will cause severe, debilitating heart damage. Now, last week we talked about how to defeat persistent temptations. That starts with learning to plan ahead, predetermining your patterns of temptation. You've got them, I've got them, we all know that. There should never be an argument in your mind, in any of our minds, that that's true. We know that in certain places, with certain people, at certain times, whether it be the time of the day or the day of the week, that there are times when we are more tempted than others. We know that. And all it takes is just a little bit of effort, planning ahead, predetermining those patterns to help us avoid those places, those trouble spots where persistent temptation continually nips at our heels. It was simply asking the journalistic questions of who, what, when, where, and how. If you can answer those in terms of your temptation, you're well on your way to avoiding heart damage. But it doesn't stop there. You see, if temptations were these big, scary, teeth-bearing creatures, it would be easy to avoid. That's why the country song about the devil, the devil comes and knocks on the lady's front door. She had no idea that he had blue eyes and blue jeans. See, if the devil was really the way the movies depict him, with this fallen angel with horns coming out, and sort of the picture of Revelation almost, it would be easy to avoid him. That's not how he dresses in temptation for us. He's got blue eyes and blue jeans. He's appealing. If temptations just always showed their teeth, bared their teeth, and was this scary thing, we would avoid it altogether, like the guy who goes into the store downtown. And as he walks in the door, he notices there's a sign right on the window that says, "Beware of dog." So he walks in and he's kind of looking around and he gets his stuff. He's sort of walking thinking, man, I don't want some dog to come up on me. So he gets up to the counter with his items to purchase, and he looks down, there's this old hound dog, laying down there asleep next to the counter. And the man said, "Excuse me, sir, is this the dog you're saying beware of with the sign on the door?" And the manager said, "Yes, it is." And he said, "Well, no offense, but that's not exactly a dog I really need to beware of." And he said, "Oh, sure." He said, "Until I put the sign up, everybody was tripping over him." That's the way temptation works, isn't it? If the big pit bull Rottweiler was standing at the door of temptation, just daring you to be courageous enough to step in, we probably wouldn't. The fact of the matter is, by not paying attention and not looking around, we actually trip over stumble onto or find ourselves in those positions where we shouldn't be. Once you predetermine your pattern of temptation, asking who, what, when, where, and how, and saying, I can't go there. Just a quick example from my own past. I cannot go, as much as I would like to, at certain venues and certain artists. I just cannot go to rock concerts anymore. There have been several in the last few years that I would have loved to see. I would love to see Bob Seger in concert. I've seen many concerts in my life. I've never seen Bob Seger. That's just somebody I like. I have followed, could sing every one of their songs. I've never seen the Eagles live. Would love to see them. I can't go. You know why? Because there are certain smells, and those of you who have been to a concert know exactly what I'm talking about. There are certain smells of illegal activity going on there that once my nostrils catch wind of it, even if I don't engage in it, it takes me back to a time when I did, and it makes me long for it. You know what? I don't even want to long for it anymore. I don't even want to long for it anymore. I mean, you got 12 years clean. Why even go there?
All right.
And if you got problems with the bottle, you need to stay away from the bars. You need to stay away from the county line. You need to stay away from those places. That's the who, what, when, where, and how that I'm talking about. Once you determine those, once you predetermine those areas of temptation, then the next thing you've got to do, that we've got to do, is we have to protect the condition of our heart. We have to protect the condition. First, predetermine your pattern. Secondly, you've got to protect the condition of your heart. Now imagine this, and this is not hard to imagine for some of you. Imagine taking your child, or your grandchild, or your niece or nephew, somebody you love dearly. Imagine taking Alyssa. Let's make it real. To the doctor, because she's not feeling well. And it's obvious in her behavior and her demeanor that she doesn't feel well. And you take her to the doctor, and the doctor, God forbid, says, this child has a rare heart condition. And here's what you've got to do. You have got to feed her this particular diet. She can only have this, and this. And you have to limit her physical activity. And it's going to require, at some point, that she have this kind of surgery. And then things will be back to normal. But you've got to follow this, or there's going to be trouble. Now just imagine that hypothetically for just a minute. How would you, as a parent, as a grandparent, as an aunt or an uncle, treat that situation? You know the answer. That's rhetorical. You would follow exactly what that doctor said to the T. You would feed that child only what he said, the best nutrition. You would take her to see the best doctor. You would limit her physical activity. You would do exactly, and then even when he said, I did this surgery and she should be okay now, you would still take it easy. You know why? Because the life of that child and the relationship with that child far outweighs any inconvenience we might suffer. Right? Isn't it amazing that we don't take the same precautions when God says, here is what you need to do to protect the condition of your heart. Here's what you need to do. You need a steady diet of my word. Steady diet. We need to be in constant communication with each other. I'm not talking about, as we talked about last night, yesterday Randall and I had this discussion, I'm not talking about where you walk around all day saying, Dear Lord, and you say a prayer in Jesus' name, and then you go, I need to give another. I'm talking about having a mind of talking with God. Out loud, in your mind, in your car, at work, on the golf course, wherever you are. Amen. God says, steady diet of my word. This is your nutrition. We need communication. You need exercise being plugged into the body. You need these things to protect the condition of your heart. And then sometimes because we think it's inconvenient or it's not fun, the way we might define fun, or it's not this or that, we just sort of ignore what God has to say about that. And then we suffer the consequences and then go, what happened? What's going on? Why is my life so screwed up? I hear it all the time. One finger out to you, three to me. I do the same thing. This is how you become a good minister, a good servant for me, Randy. Yeah, but Lord, I'm so busy editing tape down here. I'm so busy making slideshows. I'm so busy. Protect the condition of your heart. We would do everything, anything and everything under the sun to protect the life of that young child. Everything. We would go above and beyond. I'm talking about expense and effort. Any resource we have would be poured in to helping that child develop a healthy heart so she could be normal and healthy. Isn't the same true of us? Much more so in a spiritual sense. God is telling us to protect the condition of our heart. You want to know why? Because the condition of your heart will affect positively or negatively every single thing you do in life. Everything. The ancients said that the seat of the emotions were the bowels. The Jews believed that the seat of emotions, where all emotions spring. Now, it's hard to define emotions, right? I mean, we know what they are. We know what we feel when we cry because something is really sad, or even when we're really happy and we cry. We get choked up, or when we laugh. We know those are emotions. Where do they come from? The ancients believed it was the bowels, somewhere in here, because that's where they felt it. But as you move to the New Testament, you see that Jesus is talking about the heart, the part that can love, that can hate. Why is it important to protect your heart? Solomon's got it right. He's been right for thousands of years. Above all else, guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. In fact, what I did today, I thought, so many people read different versions. Let's get some different versions on here and see how different they are. Guess what? They're not different. In fact, they concur with each other and build on each other. That's the NIV. Guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. If you like the King James, fine. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. How about the Message? Keep vigilant watch over your heart. That's where life starts. And I will go further than Peterson, and that's where life ends. Amen. And the New Living Translation is the one I like the most out of these four. Above all else, guard your heart, for it affects everything you do. You know that's right. There is no argument there. You know the condition of your heart will affect every single thing you do. Your heart condition determines your life condition. Your heart condition determines your life condition. Now, how does temptation factor in? This is how it factors in. Satan wants you and he wants me to take our attention off of the inside things and focus on the outside things. Now, if you haven't heard anything at all yet, listen closely and listen well to this. If you and I are going to defeat persistent temptations, we've got to stop listening to the person who has been lying since the Garden of Eden. He's a liar. He's always been a liar. He's always going to be a liar. In fact, if you lie, he's your daddy. What the Bible says. We've got to stop listening to him, because he does not have your best interest at heart. He certainly doesn't have your heart condition in mind, at least when in terms of making it good and right and righteous before God. If we are going to make lasting changes in our lives and avoid heart damage, it has to come from the inside. Now again, listen closely. Don't focus on your behavior yet. Don't focus on your willpower yet. Don't even focus on your emotions yet. That will come. Focus first on what is causing in your life your trouble, your bad behavior, the way that you're talking, if there's filth coming out of your mouth. Whatever it is that you're doing in life, look first at the root causes, because I'll guarantee you, if you do what Satan wants you to do, and that is focus on the outside, you will be continually defeated. Because you know what he says? He whispers in my ear and in yours all the time, you just keep messing up. This Christian life thing just isn't working. Why don't you come over to my side where you can do whatever you want? You keep calling yourself a Christian, but you don't have much willpower. You're kind of weak. You know what? You don't need any willpower on my side of the fence. Come on over. He doesn't want you to get inside, because he knows that's where the root causes are. If you don't think Satan is good at that, let me tell you something. He has been in the blame game since the garden. The very last book of the Bible tells us that the accuser of our brothers, of you and me included, that is Satan, who accuses us before God day and night, has been hurled down in this picture of Revelation. I want to get theological here for you, but you know what I see there that sticks out to me? He accuses day and night. Day and night. Day and night. He's mine. Did you see what Randy did? Oh my goodness. Look at what he's thinking. Look how he's acting. He did the same thing with Moses. I mean, you read the story of Moses, you go, Moses was a great guy. God's friend, spoke with God face to face. I mean, here's a dude who had it together. And in the end, after Moses is dead, the devil is arguing with Michael for his body. I get him. He's mine. He's a sinner. He's mine. And Michael said, The Lord is going to handle it. The Lord rebuke you, in fact, he said. Satan accuses day and night. He's accusing us of bad behavior, and he tells us that over and over again. You're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You don't have the willpower. Come over to my side. And so until we get an x-ray of what's going on inside of our heart, we will never get to the root cause. That's why we need an x-ray this morning. We need it so we can get to the root cause. How do you evaluate? It's difficult. Evaluating anyone's heart, even your own, can be difficult. Because we got all kinds of prejudices, we got all kinds of walls built up, even in our own life. We're divided against ourselves sometimes. We refuse to admit some of our own faults and frailties. We see them clearly in other people. But it's easy to overlook them or minimize them in our own lives. I want us to take a little quiz. Today, I'm not a sociologist by any stretch. I'm certainly not a psychiatrist or a doctor of any kind. You will not find this quiz in the AMA journals, American Medical Association. But it does take into consideration various aspects of your heart, and it can be used as a guide. It's a guide. It's not, I want you to walk out here going, oh, you know, I'm all messed up. This is just a guide to help you think about what the condition of your heart is. You've got to be honest, or you might as well crumple up the paper and throw it away. If you're not going to be honest with yourself, don't even do it, because it'll be worthless. How are we going to get to the heart of the matter? Just 8 things here, very quickly. What I want you to do is fill in the blank, and then you can go right down there to that little quiz and circle or slash through from 0 to 5, and I'll explain it as we go, where you are. The first one involves your physical condition. That's the first one. The first one involves your physical condition. Are you more exhausted or energetic? If you live in a constant state of exhaustion, most of the time, most of the day, give yourself a 0. If you're exhausted only some of the time, you have days, bad weekends, whatever, then rate yourself 1 to 4. If you feel like you're never exhausted and you've got energy all the time, then you mark a 5. Be honest. Where are you on this? 1 to 5. How are you doing emotionally? Are you typically more of a pessimistic person? The glass is half empty. Are you more of an optimistic person? The glass is half full. Some people I know and have been around because of my denominational background. I'm not saying that my denominational background is one that breeds more pessimistic people, but it just seems like, at least in my own sphere of influence, I had a lot of pessimistic people always being negative. That rubs off. Negativity is just as catchy as the flu. And it brings people down just as fast. People who always have a bad case of the woe is me's. Are you generally more pessimistic, or are you an OPE? You know what an OPE is? OPE, you ooze positive encouragement. Where on that scale are you? All right? Where are you mentally? What is it? How are you doing in terms of your mental state? And this is what I mean by that. Are you bored to tears most of the time, or are you challenged in your job? You know, at school, wherever you are in your walk of life, do you find yourself sitting around just bored, not being challenged at all? Are you in a job maybe where you've sort of gone as high as you can go, no more chance for achievement, or I hate to use going up the ladder, but you know what I mean, excelling in your job? Have you just sort of reached a stalemate and you can't go any further? Or are you constantly challenged by your work or by your school or whatever it is that you're doing? Are you, basically, mentally, are you going through life on autopilot just because you're just not being challenged? Or are you constantly seeing, or at least occasionally seeing, new challenges that help push you closer to your goals, particularly spiritually? Where are you mentally? What's your mental state like? How are you, or what about the issues of security? And here's what I mean by that. Are you confident in yourself and who you are, or are you mostly unsure? Security, and this is for free, security in oneself is directly connected to security, your own security in God. Your own personal security and confidence is directly related to confidence in who you are, if you're saved or not, in your relationship with God. I don't care what anybody says. These guys that go around, and I was one of them, that go around 10 feet tall and bulletproof, just just cocky and arrogant and think they can take on the world, that is nothing more than a mask of insecurities. I've seen it time and time and time again. Guys who think that, and I suppose women too, I see it more in guys, who just think that they're impenetrable to anything. And they can just do anything, and they're God's gift to women, or they're God's gift to this sport, or they're God's gift to their job. That's nothing more than a mask for insecurity. Some of the most unassuming people I know are also the most confident, because they know whose they are and who they are. Where are you? How are you doing when it comes to your wounds? You all have them. I have them. If you don't have many now, young people, you will. And the older you get, the more wounds you have. That's part of life. Wounds are inflicted by living, not because of who you are, the color of your skin, or what job you have. Wounds are part of life. How are you doing? Are most of your wounds healing or healed? Or do you still have open and festering wounds? Are you in a crisis maybe right now, or just on the other side of one? Are you carrying around bitterness and anger and resentment? That's going to put you down lower on the scale in terms of number. If you're pretty good and you feel pretty good about things, and I'll just be honest with you, this has been a particularly difficult one for me. Be honest, I almost thought about skipping this one altogether. Because, stand up and preach, preacher, physician, heal thyself. Wounds have been difficult for me. I take things very personally. Very personally. When things don't go well, or people don't like me, or I feel like I've hurt somebody, I take that very, very, very seriously. It comes of being perfectionistic. I'm type A and anal retentive and any other adjective you want to throw my way. How are you doing? I'm actually doing better on some of those wounds than I used to be. And many of you know when they were open and festering. Because it came, what comes up comes out. And I'm not talking about regurgitation. I'm talking about what I said about other people. Just being honest, how difficult that's been for me. And I know some of you are carrying some of that same kind of baggage for other things. How are you doing in your wounds? Rate it and be honest, 0 to 5. You have inflicted pain, and pain has been inflicted upon you. Now, when discussing your relationships, how are things going with your relationships? Do you feel alienated, like you're alone? Do you feel fairly supported? Of all the people in your life, in your sphere of influence, would you fall more on the I'm alone end of the scale, I'm alienated from other people, or do you feel supported? And I'm talking about your immediate family, your genetic family. I'm talking about your spiritual, your blood kin in Jesus family, maybe at work, whatever, your friends. Are there walls between some of your relationships that you've built? You feel detached or connected? I have, again, talked with and counseled people, and just been in general discussions with people who say things like, well, I've been going to this church or that church for X amount of years, and I just don't feel connected. I don't feel supported there. And I say, are you plugged in? What does that mean? Well, that means when they get together to sweep the floors, are you there? No. When they get together and have sandwiches and cookies, are you there? No. Well, tell me what your life is like with your church family. Well, I go in 5 minutes after it starts and leave 5 minutes before it leaves. How can you expect to be plugged in that regard? People are not going to drag you kicking and screaming. We provide as many opportunities here. It hasn't always been the case in other churches I've worked with, but in this one we provide ample opportunity at many different levels to get plugged in. From kids with Jesus freaks to going skating. Well, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I'm not that big fan of skating. When I was 11, it was wonderful. You got to hold hands with a girl and go in a circle. All right. Now it hurts my knees and my ankles, and it's not high on my I want to go do list. But you know what? I would go there and have sore knees and sore legs and sore ankles just to be with you guys. Every opportunity that you get to plug in. How are you doing in your relationships? If you feel alienated and lonely and unsupported, let's try a little axiom of life. To have those kind of friends, you got to be that kind of friend. Try that. What about the general quality of your life? And here's what I mean by that. I don't necessarily mean in terms of your health. We already covered that one. This one has to do with what we would typically refer to as happiness or sadness. How happy or sad are you? Now, we know from a spiritual standpoint that happiness is based on circumstances. The very word hap means chance, which means, well, I'm happy if and when I have fat wallet, good job, great relationships, everything's going well, I'm happy. If it's not, then I'm sad. Biblical happiness means blessedness. It means no matter what happens to me, I'm okay because what happens in me is good. If what happens in me is right, what happens to me doesn't matter. But back off of that for a second and just be honest. If you had to rate yourself from sad to happy, generally speaking, where are you? You at the bottom of the barrel, scraping around, hanging on, just constant tears, depression, or maybe you're just pretty happy-go-lucky most of the time, somewhere in between. Rate yourself and be honest. And last of all, most importantly, where are you spiritually? Are you dry, lacking, or are you well-fed and hungering for more? Once again, I take responsibility for some of this. As a minister, pastor, one of the leaders, I take responsibility for part of your spiritual nourishment. But listen to me again. If this is the only time your nose is ever in any scripture, you are in trouble. You cannot rely on me. You will not go to heaven based on my faith or my ability to preach. You're going to go to heaven. You're going to have, not just go to heaven, you're going to have a quality of life like that over there on that wall that says love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You're going to have that kind of life based on your relationship with Jesus and how you get there through your study, your prayer life. I'm here to help coach you along. Amen. Do not let this be the only spiritual meal you have all week. Excuse me. It will not be enough. Where are you spiritually? Are you rejuvenated? Recharged? When you leave here, I hope so. Are you looking to go deeper? Are you more desolate, out in the desert? Just kind of dried up, no oasis in sight? Rate yourself 0 to 5 and be honest. Why is this so important? This is so important because we don't want to give the devil a foothold. Now quickly, I'm just going to go over this quickly because you can read for yourself. What does all this mean? If you just sort of kept it in your mind, you can add it up. If you got between 35 and 40, the main thing I can say to you is praise the Lord, but be careful. Be careful that you stand and take heed lest you fall. It's easy to go, man, things are going real good, and just sort of, you can praise the Lord and be happy in the Lord, but you can also become prideful. And that will be your downfall. Most of us probably are going to fall in the next category, or many of us maybe, 25 to 34. If that was your score, you're generally vulnerable to temptation, just like the rest of us. Just breathing in and out, you're generally vulnerable to temptation. Shore up your defenses. I would say that to everybody every day. Shore up your defenses. Those who scored in 15 to 24, you're extremely vulnerable, more so to temptation, because you've got several areas of weakness. I would say wake up. Take note today. Even though this is not some Harvard put-together quiz, it is indicative of some things. Wake up, or there's big trouble around the corner. And if you scored 0 to 14, you're in trouble already. If in all these areas you're scoring 0s and 1s and 2s, you're in trouble already. And you need to get help today. We don't want to give the devil a foothold of any kind. Don't give the devil, Paul says, any kind of foothold in your life. And not to rip that out of context, but if you go read Ephesians 4, he's talking about exactly what I'm talking about. He's saying to those Ephesians, how is it that you're living? How is it that you're talking? Don't let unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. Don't lie to each other. Tell the truth. Don't treat each other with contempt. Don't gossip. Don't treat each other in this way, because you give the devil a foothold when you do that. And you know what the devil does in your life? He's looking for cracks in the dam. That's what he's looking for. Amen. To come together and not be honest and not leave here committed to change every time we leave here. If we don't do that, we are absolutely wasting our time. And God's not in the status quo game. He could care less. God's in the business of change lives, and change has to come from the inside out. The goal of today's lesson is to remind us to guard our heart, because all life springs from it. God gives the answers most of the time. It's right in front of our nose. or right next to us on a pew, or in the book, where our eyes should be. Close with this statement from P.T. Forsyth: unless there is within us that which is above us, we shall soon yield to that which is about us.